Welcome to a new episode of Manage to Retain, where I talk about issues around business for employees, your customers, recruiting, retention, productivity, and profitability. And I do it with my friends, Sherri and Lou. Listen in, you might get a few tips here on how to do leadership better in your business.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Manage to Retain. My name is Vinay Raman. I'm the CEO of Carmo. As a company, we decode human and organizational behaviors through data. So we take the data from a company, we take the metrics, the KPIs, the key performance indicators, and we show you what's happening with the organization so you can drive higher and higher levels of performance, behavior, and engagement and retention with your employees. But I wouldn't be able to tell the whole story by myself. So I got my two friends, Sherri and Lou. Sherri and Lou, how are you all doing today?
Doing good, Vinay. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you all too. So I told them about the data side of things. You all do what I'll call the more human side, the consultation, what I might call the softer side of things, making people understand how to shift their mentality, shift their mindset. Do you mind talking about that a little bit, just so everyone knows who you are as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Sherri and I are owners of the Lou Everett Group. Our focus is developing leaders, and using data like this is certainly a big part of that. Help us understand the KPIs that are being measured and identify where those gaps are and how we can. And today we're talking about this: incentivize and show employees where they can go from where they are to where we want them to be. When it comes down to understanding the mindset, as you mentioned, understanding what is it that drives this particular employee. That is a metric that is difficult to measure, but with the marriage of data and understanding people, putting those two things together and marrying those two concepts it provides the magic potion, if you will, or the formula to be able to motivate and move people in the direction that we're looking to get.
So I like that word marriage, right? It is a word that I think is very familiar to a lot of people in the world. I mean, I believe it's a word that most people are comfortable with, but marriage is usually only thought of sort of in a relationship at the home, not so much at the office, right? In a professional setting. So let me suggest another word, maybe integration as the word that we use in the office, right? Marriage at home, integration at the office. But regardless, it's how do you put both of those sides, sort of the qualitative and the quantitative stuff, together to work in harmony in that integration or that marriage. And I think that's a little bit of what I'm hearing from you is that, and part of, I think, why we talk is this opportunity to bring all those things together. Is that the way you're seeing it? Is that where you see a lot of companies struggle and leaders struggle today?
Yeah, certainly. I think the integration it's a good word for it, and why the word marriage really brings it home with the integration piece is we can integrate, but are we committed long term? And when it comes down to this and being committed as leaders to be able to identify this connection between a performance and motivation is really what's going to drive our numbers and our KPIs where they need to be.
So I found a fantastic quote the other day that said, as leaders, our ability to influence others to see join us in the vision that we have is our sign of effectiveness or greatness as a leader.
Sure.
So we're asking them to change behavior to align with where we're going. And I think that's sort of at the crux of that integration or marriage between employee and supervisor. Is that the way you all think about it as well?
I agree. I agree with that for sure.
So I've got some graphics, as I always do, visualizations based on data. And what I'd like to show you is this idea that, I've always, I've done enough sports in my life, done enough competitions of various sorts that the competitions usually tend to make me lift myself to a higher level. And I think this is universally applicable to people. If you give them a competition that they could potentially compete in, it allows them or gives them the space or opportunity to lift themselves up to a higher level of performance. So I'd like to share a graphic with you here, a visualization of a contest that we ran, and you'll see a number of pieces of information redacted out just because we didn't want to share too much info. me share my screen real quick.
Sure.
Sherri and Lou, can you see what I have on screen here?
Absolutely can.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So let me walk everyone through this real quick. And I'd love to, Lou, I think we were talking just beforehand. You've got a lot of experience in a call center. So I think I'd love to hear some of your expertise and perspective on it. So we're looking at a customer support representative, call center representative. We just blanked out the rest of the name, so we'll call him Chris for the sake of this. And this is their dashboard as of 2 days ago that we're looking at. We're looking at what the actuals are in these particular categories. We're looking at what the top performer is, where the green flags are there. They're doing very well. Red flags, not so well. Blanks they're right in the middle. And it kind of gives them what not only the top value is, but also what the bottom value is and how they kind of rack and stack against that. It gives them a score, right? 100 is the best. 49 right now is what a bottom performer is performing at in this campaign. And it's an incentive campaign where this person's got a 68 out of that 100. Let's just maybe just stop right there. Is this the right way to incentivize people to shift their behaviors? Sherri, Lou, what are your thoughts?
Well, talks about KPIs, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's a
numbers.
good start and the numbers because people love the tangible of it. And I think this is a great start. Let's put it that way.
Well, I always look at it like anything, right? As an example, we had to move some furniture around in the house, and we had to go from one room, which was downstairs, and move a piece of furniture upstairs, or get a piece of furniture for a room in the upstairs area. What do we use to measure the space to make sure we can fit it? Well, we have a tool, and that tool is a tape measure, right? We use a tape measure or a ruler, if you will, but a tape measure to measure the space to make sure that what I'm seeing downstairs and with this particular piece of furniture is going to fit upstairs in the space that I want. Well, that tape measure has a very specific thing on it, and those are numbers and measurements. And I'm using the tool to get the outcome I'm looking for, and that is to identify what has to happen next. If it fits, I can move the furniture there. If it doesn't fit, I've got to relocate, find out where to put the piece of furniture. You see, I'm not throwing the piece of furniture out. I'm just identifying where it's going to fit. These numbers do the exact same thing. This is a measurement, right? This is an ideal. And in order for us to know and for Chris to understand where they fit, he needs to know where he's being measured and what those measurements are. Yeah. And then once we do that, now we as a leader can say, he's fitting or he's not quite fitting. And how can we manipulate and toss and turn to make sure that Chris does fit and accomplish the numbers and the goals that we're looking for the benefit of the company, but also for the benefit of Chris.
Yeah.
Right?
I like that analogy, the measuring stick, right? I mean, so many of us are familiar with that idea or that concept of the tool, the measuring stick or the measuring tape. To take that one step further, we've got this graphic over here in this kind of dark gray area here, sort of in the center, kind of shows you how the average person is performing. And this blue area shows you, the bigger the blue area, that means the more effective their performance, the closer to that 100 they're getting on the test. We can see on certain dimensions like available time, Chris can do a little bit better here to be closer to average. But places like this, average talk time, calls per day, we're starting to see that Chris is doing a fantastic job there. But then again, there's a couple of areas still. I think this blue area kind of gives them a very quick representation, sort of a gut sense of how they're doing overall. They're just really far exceeding on some areas, but there's still some areas to really kind of push them to the next level of performance. Is that the way you all see this graph and kind of how you're thinking about it?
Absolutely. I mean, numbers don't lie. That's the great thing about numbers, right? Unless we're measuring it wrong. That's just reality, right? Going back to the measuring of the space. If I measured it by 1 inch off and I thought of it different, wrote it down wrong, it's going to be wrong. And so with this, it's not going to be wrong because it's measuring it in two different ways. It's showing us this numbers in two different directions. Here we're seeing, hey, he's doing amazing in these specific areas. He's spread out, but how can we take that and make it to where Chris becomes that top performer? How can we make that fit into that top performer realm?
Yeah. And in terms of shifting behavior, I made that assumption that competitions are a great way to get people to shift their behaviors.
Sure.
Being able to put something like a quarterly incentive here, where they're eligible for a cash bonus or maybe an extra day off, or they get to walk around with a golf towel for that quarter.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that seems just like I do it with my kids. If I want them to clean up their room, I offer ice cream, and all of a sudden that room is cleaned up in minutes, as opposed to me, getting red in the face and screaming 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Just an ice cream makes all the difference in the world.
Solves everything.
That's right. Ice cream solves everything. It's kind of whatever, right? Have you all seen the same thing in management and training and leveling up leaders, that just creating incentives for people on your team, measurable incentives like this, is an easy way to get performance boosts and changes?
Yeah. And to back up what you're saying, and it's something that we really got to be careful of, because a lot of leaders who tend to be in a leadership role where they're looking at these numbers and trying to do something different to get people incentivized, is they look at it as like, oh, everyone loves competition. And the reality of it is that's not true. That's not true. So we've got to motivate them differently. Some are going to be motivated by being competitive. They could have all the money. They can be a millionaire, but if they're competitive, they're going to work and work and work for that extra $100. But if they're not competitive at all, and they don't really care what anybody else is doing, but they really need and really love that time they have with their family, an extra day off, they're going to work for that. So we need to take all those pieces and look at that very, very clearly and understand our people. That's where this human relationship piece comes in. This is where those, as you mentioned before, what normally is called the soft skills, a soft approach, when in actuality it's more of the power approach. We have to approach this with a power of influence, identifying what is it that drives Chris? What drives him? Is he driven by competition? Or is he driven by, I just love this because I can support my family kind of thing? What is he driven by? And whatever they're driven by, we want to then take that measurement and apply it to the incentive. And then now all of a sudden you've got every single person incentivized in a way that drives them. Right? So that's why one reason or one way, it's not always about money. It's not always about time. It's not always about competition. But you take and combine those, most of the people are going to thrive and want to drive in one of those 3 or 4 categories. And that's what you need to create for.
Well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I think we've been looking at this for a little while here. You all have 10 principles that you use so that leaders can lead with influence. Are there maybe 1 or 2 principles that you think are sort of a take-home message here from this idea of creating a campaign, putting something in front of someone, a quarterly incentive program, monthly, weekly, whatever that incentive time frame is? Is there a particular principle or 2 that applies to that?
Yeah, I think the others principle fits right into this. Right. So the 10 principles, and I'll let you talk about the others principle, but the 10 principles that we're talking about here are 10 principles that Sherri and I have developed, and our company has developed over our 5 decades or so of combined experience in leadership management and business ownership, as understanding people. And these 10 principles that we believe that every leader must follow to lead with influence will provide the dynamics and the approach as well as the outcome that you desire. And one of those principles is the others principle, which doesn't focus on us as a leader, but focuses on the person, the other person. So do you want to mention that real quick, what that's all about?
Yeah, so we believe that, the others principle is the centerpiece of leadership. It's imperative that a leader every day, when you go in and sit at your desk or at your office, wherever that you are, is the first thing that you really should be thinking about is today is not about me, it's about them. Mm-hmm. And so that's the beauty about, this other principle. We have another one that complements this. It's called the power principle as well. And that actually defines your actions with those types of thoughts that we think. So it goes hand in hand, but really for this particular principle, it's always about them and to see what we can do, and everything that we view is going to be intentional.
Yeah, it's important for us to be very intentional about the person that we're approaching. We lose that in leadership because let's just be real. Okay, if you're a leader and you're responsible for the bottom line, you're responsible for the KPIs, what's going to happen when our department is not hitting the metrics? We're going to get called in, we're going to get called out, we're going to feel the heat and the pressure. But you see, just like in a race, and say the Indy 500 as an example, the guy throwing the flag to say stop, go, pause, who's the winner, the flag's important, but he's not the guy that drives the car. So we have to make sure that we are able to understand that, yeah, our manager and leader might be giving us the flags, but we've got to drive the car, and we have a team to do that. And we have the ability to do that with certain skills and approaches. And it's about the person that we're leading. It's not always about us. So we've got to try to find a happy medium there to be able to manipulate the game, if you will, or the measurement, so that we can go on ahead and incentivize our staff and our employees.
Like that. So if creating a campaign like this based on the data that you have is interesting, feel free to reach out to me. Please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to show you how you create a campaign like this for yourself using the data that you already have in your organization. Alternatively, if you have something like this already, or you want to be able to communicate more effectively with your employees, the leaders in your team, the supervisors in your team, so you can level up that leadership, I encourage you to reach out to Sherri and Lou, because that's what they do very well, and I've only heard good things so far. So for those who listen in, thank you so much for your time today and listening, and hopefully you got something out of this and can see how you can start to shift the behaviors of your people by putting incentives and dangling carrots in front of them. But otherwise, Sherri and Lou, as always, thank you so much for your time.
You bet, Vinay.